You both want to solve the same problem. That is what makes this messier. You are sitting there, trying to make one decision. Maybe it is about the relationship. Maybe it is about moving, money, family, or whether to stay in something that already feels strained. The point is, both people care. Both are trying. But then it splits. One keeps pulling the conversation back to weak reasoning, missing facts, and contradictions that do not hold up. This is common in INTPs. They can care deeply, but if the conclusion is shaky, they cannot relax into it. And the more pressure they feel, the more they strip everything down and question harder. The other keeps pulling the conversation back to what this choice means, what it costs internally, and what should not be traded away just because it is inconvenient. This is common in INFPs. They can be analytical too, but if the choice starts feeling false, they cannot just smooth that over and move on. So what happens? They stop arguing about the decision. They start defending the thing underneath it. This is where it starts to break. As the same problem already feels different. You are both looking at the same choice, but not protecting the same thing. You reread the message. The INTP reaction is immediate. They start testing the structure. Does the reason actually fit the action? Is everyone skipping over the obvious flaw? They can already see 3 possible outcomes, and none of them work if the premise is bad. So they keep reframing the issue until it becomes tighter, cleaner, harder to fake. The INF reaction is just as immediate, but in a different direction. They start checking the internal cost. What gets compromised here? What are we pretending is small when it actually matters? They may see the practical options too, but they cannot ignore that familiar feeling that this choice will keep bothering them later, even if it looks reasonable now. And here is the twist. It looks like one is being cold, and the other is being stubborn. But that is not the real split. One is protecting coherence in the conclusion. The other is protecting coherence in the self. So the first tension appears fast. The INTP feels the real issue is getting blurred. The INFP feels the real issue is getting minimized. Same problem, different alarm system. But this gets worse. Each tries to fix what the other is protecting. This is where the friction starts. The INTP hears, "This does not feel right," and tries to help by refining the reasoning. They clarify terms. They remove exaggerations. They ask, "Okay, but what exactly is the part that does not hold?" To them, if the logic improves, the distress should reduce. They are not trying to dismiss the person. They are trying to make the decision real enough to trust. The INFP hears all that tightening and feels something else. It starts sounding like their deeper concern is being translated into a technical issue. So they push back. They explain what should not be sacrificed. They name the meaning, the principle, the line that should not be crossed just because it is efficient. They may even adjust parts of their argument, but not the core. The room goes quiet. Now both feel missed. The INTP starts seeing unnecessary attachment. Why are we acting like every adjustment is betrayal? The INFP starts seeing unnecessary detachment. Why are we acting like this is just a puzzle when something important is at stake? And that is the twist. It feels like they're helping each other, but each is accidentally pressing on the exact thing the other is trying to protect. Which one are you? Have you been the one refining the argument, or the one refusing to let the deeper meaning get edited out? And now it shifts. The disagreement turns into repeated reframing. This is where misunderstanding takes over. Nobody replies for a second. The INTP keeps returning to consistency. If a reason changes every time it is challenged, then what are we even deciding on? Underneath that, there is also a quieter pattern. They remember how often messy emotional framing has led to bad calls before, so they trust what survives scrutiny more than what feels urgent in the moment. The INFP keeps returning to significance. If every meaningful concern gets reduced to a flaw in wording, then what are we protecting anymore? Underneath that, there is another layer too. They are already tracking how this decision will feel later, after the pressure is gone, when they have to live with themselves in the silence. So the same sentence keeps getting translated into two different threats. The INTP hears, "Stop questioning this." The INFP hears, "Stop caring about this." That is why the conversation starts looping. One reframes to make it hold up. The other reframes to make it stay true. And every new attempt sounds, to the other person, like the real issue is still being missed. This is not logic versus emotion. That reading is too shallow. It is coherence versus coherence, just in different forms. But now it gets personal. Pressure makes both more rigid than they expect. This is where emotional conflict kicks in. You know this moment. They stop talking the way they did at the start. The INTP, feeling dismissed, gets sharper, less cushioning, more direct cuts through the argument. They may have been patient earlier, even open to multiple angles, but once they feel the conversation is being held together by sentiment or selective reasoning, they stop softening. And weirdly, this can sound harsher precisely because they do care and feel no one is protecting the truth of the situation. The INFP, feeling pushed away from what matters, gets firmer too, less willingness to keep translating, more emphasis on the line they will not cross. They may have considered compromise earlier, even tried to explain gently, but once they feel the heart of the issue is being treated as negotiable, they stop bending. And that firmness can sound absolute, even when they have thought through the trade-offs. So now the pattern interruption hits. It looks like honesty, but it feels like attack. It looks like conviction, but it feels like refusal. The emotional consequence is brutal. The INTP starts feeling trapped in a conversation where nothing can be clarified enough to move. The INFP starts feeling alone in a conversation where nothing sacred is safe from analysis. Be honest. How do you not take that personally? And this is where it breaks. They stop defending the decision and start defending themselves. This is the breakdown. You are staring at each other and the original issue is almost gone. The INTP is no longer just asking whether the choice makes sense. Now they are defending their need to question, without being treated like they are heartless, detached, or incapable of caring. Because to them, if they surrender that scrutiny, they are not just changing their mind, they are abandoning the one thing that keeps decisions honest. The INFP is no longer just asking whether the choice feels right. Now they are defending their need to stay aligned without being treated like they are irrational, dramatic, or impossible to reason with. Because to them, if they surrender that inner line, they are not just adapting, they are betraying something essential and then being told it should not matter. That is the real fracture. Adapting no longer feels like flexibility. It feels like self-loss. And once both people feel that, every sentence gets heavier. The INTP hears pressure to approve what still does not hold. The INF hears pressure to accept what no longer feels true. Under stress, one may withdraw into cold precision. The other may withdraw into quiet distance or sudden bluntness. Either way, the debate is over. Protection mode has started. So what is the payoff here? They are not doing this to win. They are protecting integrity. The INTP is protecting the integrity of the conclusion. The INFP is protecting the integrity of the self. And if you miss that, you will keep thinking one is overthinking, while the other is overfeeling. That is not what is happening. They are responding to the same reality, but each is guarding the kind of coherence they cannot afford to lose. So here is the uncomfortable question. When you push harder in these moments, are you trying to solve the issue? Or are you trying to stop your own deeper fear from being dismissed? Because that is usually the real argument. Not the choice itself, what the choice threatens underneath. Which one are you? Have you experienced this? And this is where it breaks. Adapting no longer feels like compromise. It feels like losing something fundamental. They are not doing this to win. They are protecting integrity, one in the conclusion. the other in the self. So tell me in the comments, are you the one who keeps questioning whether it makes sense, or the one who keeps questioning whether it still feels true to who you are? If this hit a little too hard, subscribe. We are getting into the conflicts people feel, but almost never name.